Hey guys, Pastor Quinn here to give you your weekly word to help you prepare to teach this upcoming Sunday. All right, we got kind of an odd couple of weeks coming up ahead of us. We will not be in the worship room as it is finally getting ready to be renovated. So just keep in mind that that will be happening. So instead, the schedule will change slightly. Please check your email for some updates about that. In the meantime, this means that we will not have a video to show the kids because we will be outside. So most of my sermon time with the kids is going to be involved in kind of telling the story that we are talking about for that week. I'm going to be replacing the video with myself for the next couple of weeks while we are dealing with the change around in the worship room. So just be aware that the sermons will change tone just a little bit as we get through the renovation and the rebuild of the worship room. All right, now this week we are talking about Abraham, and we are starting a whole unit on him. We're going to be on him for quite a while. We're going to talk about the significance that he holds in salvation history. But first, we're going to talk about how he parallels all the stories we've already heard. So in this particular week, we are talking simply about the fact that Abram at this point, followed God and trusted him. He did what God asked him to do. Now, we're going to talk about how Abram is really a Babylonian. He's from Ur of the Chaldeans, which is in the same area as the Tower of Babel. That's really, really cool and significant. God calls him out of that. His whole family moves to Haran, which is north. Okay, so if Babylon is here, they go to Haran, which is north. Israel's over here. Here's Babylon. They go up north to Haran. And when they're in Haran, after lots of death and stuff has happened with Abraham's family, then God calls him to leave his family and travel down to the land that he is going to give him. This is the land of Canaan, where all the Canaanites currently are at. What's really important to note here is it does kind of parallel Noah's story a little bit. God called Noah to build a boat and said, there's going to be a flood. I want you to build a boat. Do this thing. He does allude that there's going to be some kind of reward or blessing or promise after it, but he doesn't tell him what it's going to be. He just says, do this thing. Same thing here with Abram. He says, take your family and go to the land that I will show you. He doesn't even initially tell him that he's going to Canaan, but rather, go to the land I will show you. So Abraham takes off. He follows the Lord. He gets to Canaan. He does the whole thing. And then we're going to find out that after this whole story here of what happens in Canaan, later is when we see the actual covenant come to fulfillment. We're going to talk about that in Genesis 12, Genesis 15, and Genesis 17. That's the focus of next week, so you don't have to spend too much time on it right now. The big thing for this week is that God told Abram to go, and he went. Now, the story goes on. He's down there. He's he's in Canaan. Lost my train of thought. He is in Canaan. There's a famine in the land, so he travels down to Egypt. Now, we want to make note of a lot of the things that happen with Abraham because a lot of these same types of things are going to happen with some of the other patriarchs. He goes down to Egypt. He lies about who his wife is out of fear. So there is some kind of there's some challenges that Abraham is facing. He's trusting God in the sense that he went to where God told him to go. A famine happens. He kind of flees to Egypt. There's no indication that God actually wanted him to do that. He goes to Egypt to kind of deal with the famine and all that. And then he lies. So it does seem like he is struggling to trust God amidst the tough circumstances. But of course, he ends back up in Canaan. Also, another thing to kind of think about is Lot and how Lot is so important here. Lot is the nephew of Abram, and Lot and Abram split. Abram goes east, which is over towards Sodom, and Abraham stays in Canaan. So that is something to note there, that he does stay where God asked him to stay there in Canaan. Again, a lot of this story this week, a lot of this part of the scripture is just setting up future things. So in the sermon, I'm just going to track out the story of Abraham. I'm going to track it from whenever he was born, up to Haran, down to Canaan, to Egypt, back. I'm going to talk about Lot, how Lot fits into it. And I'm just going to give them a very, very immersive kind of idea how the story goes here. Now, we will be outside for this story. So during the worship time will be outside. I'll explain all that in the email. Just take a look at that real closely so you know exactly what to expect. We will be outside, and we're actually going to have the kids follow me as we track through the playground area. And we're going to kind of simulate what Abram did in his travels with God, just to kind of get them to understand that God said go, and Abram went. Abram did all this traveling, did all this stuff. But at the end, he ended up back where God had him to go. The key thing here, again, is knowing who Abram is, who Sarai is, who Lot is, that God told him to go, and that he did go, and that God is going to bless him for going. We can very briefly kind of mention that he's going to, especially because this covers 11 through 13, Genesis 11 through 13 this week. And so in Genesis 12 is the first part of that covenant. So we can kind of hit on the fact that God delivers part of the covenant there, but we're going to get much more in depth about that. So this week can be more of a focus on God commanded Abraham to do something. Abram did it. God said that there was going to be a covenant coming, right? It's going to be a promise between the two coming. Next week, we're really going to talk about what that covenant is, and we're going to get really into the weeds about how that covenant affects us now. So again, it's going to be kind of weird. I know it's going to be a little different. We're going to be outside, so just expect the worship time to be a little shorter because we're just going to have to kind of navigate that as we go. Again, more information is going to be in the email about that. Really excited for you guys to see the changes that are going to be coming to the worship room. If you have any questions for this week, please let me know. I'm always glad to help, and we will see you on Sunday.